Can you be a Maori and a New Zealander?
Yes, of course you can. Well, obviously the word iwi means people, and iwi is in the word kiwi. So first and foremost...
Welcome to FirstHand, the New Zealand First podcast. I'm Tanya Unkovich, your host and a New Zealand First List MP. Join me and my guests as we explore the first-hand experiences and perspectives of New Zealand First and our journey to bring balance, experience and common sense to our politics. Today we're talking with the Honourable Shane Jones, Minister for Oceans and Fisheries, Minister for Regional Development, Minister for Resources, Associate Minister of Finance, and Associate Minister for Energy. Join us as we celebrate Waitangi Day and discuss our party's connection with Maoridom. This is FirstHand, the New Zealand First podcast. Hello, Shane. So
Hi.
Nice to have you here.
Kia ora, 2024.
Here
Bring
we
it
come.
on.
Bring it on. Bring it on. It'll be a great year, won't it?
Indeed. Well, reflective of all the hard work we did in 2023.
Yes. Well deserved now to be here, right?
Totally.
So, Ratana,
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the movement and what is the significance of this event?
Yeah, so Ratana is a small settlement near Whanganui. The name Ratana hails back to the original leader of the church, Wiremu Tahu Pōtiki Ratana. He received a vision. It is a homegrown religion, and it was created as a response to the material deprivation and the need for Maoridom to go through a greater bout of spiritual nourishment.
Nice.
It still exists as a church. In the 1930s, the leader of the Ratana movement entered into a pact with the then Prime Minister, Michael Joseph Savage. And he laid before him 4 items: a potato, a broken watch, a greenstone pendant, and a huia feather. And he said, if you are able to show the specialist skills of the watchmaker and fix the laws pertaining to the Maori land, we will hang around you the greenstone pendant and adorn your head with the huia feather, and you will have achieved the status of a great leader. And I, in return, Ratana, the leader, said, will deliver you the 4 seats of the Maori electorates. And he did.
Oh, wow.
And from that period up to date, there's been a lot of people from the Ratana Church who have been to Parliament and held the seats in the Maori electorates.
Oh, I see. And why do politicians go there? I know New Zealand First is going.
Yeah,
This year?
the modern day politicians, I think, want to acknowledge that the Ratana Church has played a key role in the political heritage of New Zealand. And look, it's a very mellow affair when we go there. They do a lot of unsung work. There's a tremendous volunteer ethic in their church. They have great brass bands, which should interest the people of the west coast of South Island, great brass band country. But genuinely, it's part of the political calendar where the government of the day and the parliamentarians interact with a key Maori institution, that being the Ratana Church.
Okay. And another big event coming up is Waitangi.
Yes.
So why is that celebrated at Te Tii?
Yes, well, Waitangi is very rarely a mellow event. Yeah. Sometimes people get cranky at Waitangi.
Yes.
However, that goes back to the original signing of the Treaty of Waitangi. Te Tii is the tiny little Maori settlement near Paihia, and it's basically where the ancestors met originally to debate whether the treaty should proceed or not. And then in 1940, a massive meeting house was opened to commemorate 100 years of the Treaty of Waitangi, and the members of the Maori battalion, many who never came home, left for the Second World War. So it's always been an area, apart from having signed the treaty there, the original signing, it's always been an area that's attracted political attention, confrontationalism, but most people go to Waitangi nowadays to enjoy the marine environment. Kids jump off the bridge, some poke fun or have debates with politicians, but it signifies this is the area where in 1840, on the 6th of February, the British Crown signed the Treaty of Waitangi with an assemblage of Maori chiefs from Northland.
And there does seem to be a bit of controversy, doesn't there, and a bit of division that's happening. So why does that happen?
Well, each year people go to Waitangi and they're not always happy in terms of the conduct or the carriage of business by the government. Jim Bolger had a hard time up there. Helen Clark had a hard time up there. John Key stopped going there. Now, I'm confident that whilst there might be a lot of colour and robust language, the government of the day, being our coalition of government not only will achieve a great deal being there, but remind people that the relationship between the Maori people and the government is not static. It's a dynamic relationship. And like all relationships, you have to invest in it. And like all relationships, they don't survive because of people believing that a relationship is a contract. Relationship is not a contract. A relationship is where you create equity and you build trust and you find shared areas where you can do something and create something larger than your own shadow.
What a wonderful explanation for New Zealanders. So why is it that New Zealanders, or why should they care about Waitangi Day?
Well, it is our national day. Norman Kirk, originally in the 70s, wanted it known as New Zealand Day. And then Muldoon then changed it to Waitangi Day. And look, we are 5 million people. We're embedded in the South Pacific. We're largely of European extraction and then Maori extraction and a mix of the two. You and I are of Tarara, Croatian extraction, and I have my Maori side as well. So I think people, they need to remember that the nation state begun with the signing of the treaty. And then all the institutions of governance and the rule of law and a whole host of other trappings came here via the British Crown. That's part of our political, social, cultural heritage. And all nations from time to time need to be reminded as to where they've come from so that they can be made more resilient as to where they're going.
Yes. Who am I and where am I going? Two big questions in life, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically, they're the questions of life, aren't they? Yeah. I mean, if you suffer ignorance or if you suffer uncertainty as to where you've come from, then it can hobble your ability to ascertain where you're going to go.
Yes.
Or you'll just be dragged along by whatever fad comes your way.
Drifting, they call it.
Okay.
Drifting,
right.
yes. Let's talk a little bit about Maori relations and things like that. So what is New Zealand First's approach to Maori issues and race relations?
Well, New Zealand First historically has regarded the treaty as a foundation stone in New Zealand, but the treaty speaks to a relationship. The treaty is not some dry, narrow contract that people can foist on the rest of us. But we need to bear in mind that all nations evolve. All nations go through the process of organic growth. And Maori leaders and tribal leaders cannot overlook the fact, if you want to win the hearts and minds of the rest of the country, then you've got to talk to the rest of the country. There's no tribal leader that has authority to order the rest of the country as to what and how communities should live. And we've had too many people, in my view, which is what New Zealand First has been very bothered by, undermining the importance of democracy. Democracy is where sovereignty comes from. Democracy is where legitimacy comes from. And democracy enables you to cast your vote, and if the other crowd aren't doing any good, then the people give you a go. And then you try and do better. If you don't kick a goal, if I can be that casual, then another group of New Zealanders and their political representatives bring their recipe for the nation. So New Zealand First is very much focused on the material well-being and, quite frankly, the ethos, which informs a lot of lifestyle choices, a lot of economic, social and cultural choices within Maoridom. And we have always been a party that wants a greater sense of responsibility to be exercised by families and individuals. If you strip people of that agency of taking responsibility for what happens to them in their lives, other than very rare circumstances, then you really are belittling that person. And that's what New Zealand First believes is true empowerment.
Yes, it absolutely is. Taking extreme ownership, some people call it.
Indeed.
Yeah. The narrative out there is one of frustration about the government's policies. Why do you think people feel that way?
I think there's misinformation. And I also think that change is awkward. The New Zealand voters, about 2.8 million, cast their votes. And they have voted for a revamp. They have voted for a reset. And it's not exclusively about the treaty or Maori issues.
No.
They are not happy in terms of the direction of the nation coming out of COVID and the sense that the government has been unable to get things done. The government has not delivered and met the aspirations of the voters, which they basically reflect a desire to enjoy a first world existence. Now, those desires are shared in every Maori community. And I suspect that beyond the misinformation, it's just going to get to a point where people will need to accept that when change happens, it's never easy. But when you're engaged in the process, when you understand what the long-term objective is, and the objective is to lift everyone in New Zealand. New Zealand First is a party of nationalists. We're not a party of tribalists. We're a party of nationalists, and we want to ensure that the foundation influences that uphold the pedigree and the heritage and the integrity of our nation aren't undermined any further. And one of the foundational influences is the fact that the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, but much has happened since then. And we've got a very dynamic, organic, and fast-changing nation. And New Zealand First wants to make sure that the pace of change or the direction of change is not hobbled or distorted by excessive demands from tribal leaders, which turn out to be quite separatist.
Well, you may have answered my next question, actually, but let's see. What are your thoughts? What thoughts do you have for the Maori out there?
Oh, well, the whānau out there, by and large, are suffering the same challenges that you and I, as garden variety Kiwis, are. It's cost of living, it's quality of education, access to healthcare, modern infrastructure, and the ability to boost our productivity, ensure that there's more income, and that our nation has the capacity to afford the things that we've grown up and taken for granted. And that can only happen if we have ongoing economic development, economic empowerment, and I'm as keen as mustard to ensure that all Maori enterprise, Maori endeavour, Maori households have an opportunity to grow as we boost the dynamism in our nation. It can be done, but it will not be delivered upon if people are stuck in a rut believing that separatism is the recipe for the future of New Zealand. That is a certain menu for not only polarisation, but gross unhappiness.
What are your thoughts on the Maori language and the names and the policies that this government is going through with?
Yeah, well, the government is not delegitimising the Maori language. I love the language, and just as when I go to church, we do most of our prayers, sing our hymns in our Maori language.
Nice.
And I think what needs to happen is the bureaucracy in Wellington needs to accept that the key feature going forward is high quality communication. And whether we like it or not, there are a host of Kiwis who are not familiar or comfortable with a number of the Maori names. We're not saying the names are going to be extirpated, but where you have a key institution within the government that has to deliver for all New Zealanders, ensure that the label, the name, the moniker it deploys is one that everyone can understand. And then if Maori speakers want to call it another name, they already do. It's not as if people are being denied the opportunity to use either name, but it was sadly over the last 4 or 5 years, too many of these names were foisted. on the public at large without the public being prepared or having the process adequately explained to them. And that's led to some disenchantment and some alienation from older New Zealanders, a host of whom are deaf a bit like myself, so they can hardly hear the name in English, let alone te reo.
So what are your thoughts about those treaty activists that defaced the English version of the treaty at Te Papa?
I was extraordinarily angered by that shallow, destructive, attention-seeking stunt. It has no support within the responsible quarters of Maoridom. The Treaty of Waitangi is a bilingual, bicultural feature of our political heritage. And the people who defaced the English version of the treaty and who, quite frankly, despoiled the space of Te Papa, I hope they get everything that they deserve, and which is public censure and some way of society showing its sense of revulsion that people ought not to feel that they have the right and arrogate to themselves the authority to move into Te Papa to make shallow, narrow, largely irrelevant political statements.
Can you be a Maori and a New Zealander?
Yes, of course you can. Well, obviously the word iwi means people, and iwi is in the word kiwi. So first and foremost, all of the world that's trying to come to New Zealand aspire to achieve our citizenship. And my message to every New Zealander of Maori descent is treasure your citizenship. It is one of the most highly valued passports in the world. We have millions of people coming from far-flung areas, war-torn, incredibly dangerous and treacherous. They want to come to live in New Zealand. What challenges and what niggles that we have here are largely insignificant when you consider the challenges to the other part of the world. So every single person of Maori ancestry is a New Zealander, and our party wants to ensure that New Zealand's fortunes are boosted. Our sense of place in the world, our sense of place in the Pacific, pride in ourselves, esteem for our environment, those are all high principles that go beyond whakapapa or ethnicity.
In the words of the first governor, He iwi tahi tatou, we are one people.
Do you believe that Maori should have different rights as tangata whenua?
Well, the reality is that a lot of Maori land represents different rights. That is a legacy of the treaty. Maori land, for example, is different than general title land. The Treaty of Waitangi settlements have accorded some of the Maori tribes distinctive entitlements, and our party is willing to respect and ensure that those settlements are not traduced, that they're not ruined by foolishness from Wellington. And whether it's food gathering rights, whether it's the rights that they already have in land, this is a legal reality. Where we draw the line is this notion of co-governance. Where we draw the line is this notion that democracy doesn't apply. And that, sadly, is what's been driven by some of our parliamentary colleagues from the Maori Party. They are like squawking birds, trying to attract attention. However, they're going to find that there's another type of squawking, and it's the sense of crying wolf. Inevitably, if you can't deliver and you don't deliver, people just dismiss your crying, your hollering as shallow political rhetoric.
So does New Zealand First believe in equal citizenship?
Yes, obviously. That's a key feature of what it means to be a part of New Zealand First. And, you know, it's really important that we boost the fortunes of all Kiwis, young Maori women and men, and give them the skills that they need. But skills represents choices. And when you make a choice, and your choices are meaningful, it's genuinely informed by education. The better educated, the better skilled, the better prepared you are for the challenges of life, then the richer are the choices that you can make. And that's all traceable back to the culture at the kitchen table, to the attitude that you take towards learning, and the commitment that you take towards improving yourself, your mother, your father, your wife, your husband, and your children. And no Wellington policy, no Treaty of Waitangi lawyer, no tribunal member can ever replace that deep and fundamental responsibility that you've got yourself.
Who am I? Where am I going? And also, what do I want? Big questions that we often don't know how to answer in life.
Well, often the simple things that motivate people in life, they're overwhelmed by technical language, they're overwhelmed by bureaucracies. But look, my dad was one of 17 children. My mum was been a school teacher. Between my wife, Dot, and I, we have 8 children and 19 mokopunas, grandchildren. And it is good to bolster a sense of place and a sense of belonging and treasure your identity, whether it's an identity you derive through your church, through your marae, through belonging to an iwi, belonging to a club. But don't let that sense of identity blind you to a larger obligation and duty, and that is to enrich your community, enlarge your sense of place and contribution to our nation.
In closing, Shane, is there anything else you would like to add? I mean, it's been a wonderful conversation. Anything else sitting there for you that you'd like to share?
We're going through a period politically on the question of the treaty and Maori rights of Whitewater. There will be some turbulence, but New Zealand First realises that unless the navigational bearings that the nation follows are designed to deepen our sense of purpose, deepen our sense of commitment to growing our overarching country, we run the risk of disappearing into 2, 3, 4, 5 multiple atoms of disputing, conflict-riddled groups. And just look at what happened to Northern Ireland. Just look at what happened to Lebanon. Just look at what is happening to other parts of the world, and we must not take that route. We must be proud and accentuate the sense of belonging and the sense of commitment to our nation.
What a beautiful way to end our conversation today. Thank you, Shane. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on FirstHand, the New Zealand First podcast. In our next episode of FirstHand, the Honourable Mark Patterson will be joining us as a guest on the podcast. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions and comments and be part of the dialogue shaping the future of our nation. Subscribe, share, and stay tuned for more engaging conversations and stories that matter. Until then, I'm Tanya Unkovich, your host and a New Zealand First List MP. This is FirstHand. Take care.